the chairperson of the Electoral Commission declared publicly the results of the presidential poll on the 9th of December. We seek to analyze that declaration and subsequent statements officially made public by the Electoral Commission on the poll. This analysis was commissioned by the former president and presidential candidate, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, to illustrate the huge fraudulent declaration that has been pronounced by Jean Mensa. The audit team will present the analysis, which will be very clear, based on facts from what she, Jean Mensa, said. It's her declaration. We are pointing to the flaw in her presentation and the subsequent attempt to massage what she said on the 9th by her statement of the 10th. To do that for us is Dr. Moses Aheto.
Okay, so thank you very much. Today, my job over here is very easy. We are subjecting the EC's own data to proper statistical rigor that is required to allow us to make proper determination of the outcome. So I'm going to do this based on her own speeches and the declaration that she made. The first one, speech by Mrs. Jean Mensa, chairperson of the Electoral Commission, on declaration of 2020 presidential election result on 9th December 2020. So that's the first part that I will take. After that, I'll move to the second part, which is also the press release on 10th December 2020, summary of the 2020 presidential election result without Techiman South constituency. So this is the job for me today. Basically, what I try to do here, or we try to do, is to look at the figures as declared by Jean Mensa, the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, on the 9th of December. That's the first part. After that, I'll go to the second part, which is on the 10th, which is actually a release. Okay, so if you look at the votes, the valid votes allocated to Nana Akufo-Addo in the 2020 presidential election, the valid one given him in the first declaration by the EC, which is on the 9th of December, is 6,730,413. That's a valid vote allocated to President Nana Akufo-Addo. Let's look at the second vote that is based on the release by the EC on the 10th of December. Let's look at that figure so that we can be comparing them closely. If you come to that value, you realize that the presidential candidate, Nana Akufo-Addo, still has a vote of the 6,730,413. Now, there is something I need to bring out at this level. During that first declaration, the EC made it clear that the total valid votes cast for the 2020 December elections was 13,434,574. That is on the 9th of December. So if you use that figure to compute the percentage valid votes that Nana Addo got as a candidate in the presidential election, you arrive at a percentage of 50.098%. 50.098%. But if you remember, the EC reported a percent of 51.295 for Nana Addo. So already there is a contradiction. Okay? Now, if you come to former President John Dramani Mahama of the NDC, he polled 6,214,889. That is for the 9th December declaration. Then, That placed him, according to the Electoral Commissioner, a percentage of 47.366. 47.366. Now, what we want to do is to look at the expected percent from the votes read for all the contestants and using the total value vote cast of 30,434,574 as reported by the UC chairperson. So when you do that, that will lead to this figure that I mentioned earlier, that will give Nana Addo a percentage of 50.098, and then former President John Dramani Mahama 46.260%. Okay. Now, there is a very interesting story that we need to remember. When the EC was making a declaration, she made a definite statement saying that, in fact, even if they were to give all the Techiman South votes to President Mahama, still he will not be able to win. Still, President Akufo-Addo will still what? Win. This is what she made in her own statement. So based on that, we try to also subject that to statistical analysis to see if indeed she has that basis to make such a declaration. Because that's a very strong statement. Else, she would have waited for the Techiman South elections to have been conducted. But because of the assumption that even if they add the whole of that to Mahama, he wouldn't have changed the vote or the outcome of the vote. And that is the reason why she went ahead and declared Nana Addo as the winner. So we want to see if indeed that is what the situation is. So basically, the meaning is that in Techiman South, according to the EC own results, there are 128,018 registered voters for Techiman South. Okay? So to test here, all we need to do is to add that number, 128,018, to the total value vote cast according to the EC themselves. And that is the 30,434,574. When you add that, you get a total of 30,562,592. So automatically that will change the denominator, or the total number of value vote cast. Okay? So when you do the computation based on that number, you realize that at this time, Nana Addo was only able to achieve 49.625% of the total value vote cast. Well, former President John Dramani Mahama will now get 46.768% of the total value vote cast. So clearly, there's a straight runoff. There is no winner in this game, based on the EC's own releases that they have made. I'm not the one saying it. EC's own release. Okay. So if you look at that, all that we did is to add the Techiman South according to what she said to Mahama, and we did a computation straightforward. If you come here, we are also doing the same thing based on the 9th December declaration. Okay? So clearly, we have been able to establish the figures that the EC themselves put out on the 9th of December. So when we subject the whole thing, including the statements she made during the declaration, it shows clearly that it's a straight runoff. So Nana Addo did not win these elections. They need to go for straight runoff. Their own figures is what we are using. Okay. Now, there are some few things that we'll be dealing with along the line. That will send me to the next slide. Here, we try to match the December 9th figures to the December 10th figures, because we realized there were some discrepancies. So we need to determine where these differences are coming from and what is the reason. So if you look at it, the 9th of December, we still have the same vote for Nana Addo for the MPP. Then we also have the same result as declared on the 9th for our PC, that is our presidential candidate. Then you realize that if you come to the 10th of December declaration, even though Nana Addo polled 6,730,413 votes for the 9th December declaration, the revised version through the release that EC has done, the next day, which is the 10th of December, Nana Addo is now giving a figure of 6,730,574 51,587, which now placed Nanaro at a percentage of 51.302 instead of the 51.295 earlier declared by the same EC, Electoral Commissioner. And somebody pointed already that if you are a referee for one activity, you expect only one outcome for that activity. So why should there be changes in the figures? Now let's look in the absolute figures. Let's look at how the whole thing looks like. If you come to the increase that was allocated to Nanado based on the second release, that's a release following the first declaration, you realize that 177 valid votes were added to Nana Addo's votes. We don't know where this figure is coming from. 174 votes were added to Nana Addo's votes. Okay. What will shock you is that if you now go to former President John Dramani Mahama's vote, you realize that there was a very drastic reduction in his votes. Very drastic reduction. If you look at the figure given to former President John Dramani Mahama on the 9th of December declaration, you realize that he was allocated 6,214,889. Again, he was allocated 6,214,889. But let's look at the 10th one, the release that came. If you come to the 10th one, President John Dramani Mahama was actually allocated 6,213,182. Again, 6,213,182. A very large difference of 1,707 was taken out of President Mahama's votes. 1,707 was removed from former President John Dramani Mahama's vote, of the NDC's votes. That's what they have done. Now, don't just leave it there. Remember that once he was shortchanged by that number, for him to catch up, because that is coming out from his own vote. So for him to catch up, he needed two times of that, to be able to catch up with Nanado again. I don't know if you get the concept. Because if I've gotten 80, and you now give me 40, already 40 is gone down. So for me to come back to the 80, I need to fight for the 40. Then for me to get to where my opponent is, I need additional 40. Because already that person has gone 2 times ahead of me. Because that's subtraction. So don't look at the 1,707 as the absolute figure, but double of that. In figure, that's what it means. That's what it means. Because this is something he got already. It's not that he's now fighting for it. He has already gotten this one. So once you take it away from him, it means you are now doubling his effort to be able to catch up again. So this is the meaning of this. We need answers to where these discrepancies. And of course, it's not only President Mahama who suffered in this. If you look at some of the other political parties, the minor ones actually, and I'll focus on NDP. If you look at the NDP vote, NDP got 6,612 on the 9th December declaration. Let's go to the release on the 10th. If you come to the relief on the 10th, they are now having 6,549. 6,549 instead of 6,612. So they have taken away 63. And you can see the trend. The question then is, where are all these figures going? If you subject all these to proper scrutiny, you realize that the strategy is that when you push somebody up, you take some from somebody, you still have to be sure that you reconcile all the figures so that it doesn't exceed the total available to you. That's the entire strategy. So that if you don't do that, I don't know, the people will expose you that the figures are not adding up. But surprisingly, still, they were not able to do the proper thing. And they were actually not adding up. Now, look at this figure here. The 30,121,112 that you see over there, if you tabulate what the EC brought for the second time, that is the actual valid votes. That is the actual valid votes. But when the EC was reporting in their revised release, what they quoted by summing up that is what? 13,119,460 as the total valid vote. But when you sum their own figure, that brought this figure to you, they don't even reconcile. What it means is that despite all the figures that they manipulated, they might not have the skill to be able to balance them properly. So that when you even add at least the figures in the table, it will equate the 30 million 119,460. So right now, as we are speaking, if you sum it yourself, you realize that you get only the 30,121,112. That's the danger we are having right now. From the same electoral commissioner. And what made it worse is that I will show another figure where even though on the 9th of December, when they were declaring, EC made it clear that the 30,434,574, again, the 30,434,574 was a valid vote. But if you see the release that came, they made a statement that inadvertently, the ECs used, there is a figure that was around 30,330-something thousand. So this figure, that is the 30,434,574, is no more in the equation. It's completely being thrown out. You don't see it even in the revised release that they brought. It's not there at all. So the question is, so can you just make a mistake by going for a figure which is 30,434,574 in your first declaration, which is on the 9th of December? Then all of a sudden, this figure actually disappeared. And when you want to make a correction, you are now saying that the figure you used the previous day shouldn't have been that figure. And you mentioned that figure, which even did not, again, reconcile with the actual figure you mentioned on the 9th of December. So where are they getting all these figures from? So statistically, what it means is that there is a systemic effort to manipulate the results. And they have done so very nicely without knowing. They have done so very nicely. These I can establish this based on their own figure that they put out. Now, another thing that will surprise you is that when she made the second release, she made it clear that even though the total valid vote changes to the 30,119,460, it does not affect the percentages. And for that matter, it does also not affect her what? Declaration. That's what she said. But you and I can see the changes in the absolute values and can see how much change they brought into the percentages. So clearly, what this is telling us is that we are in a situation where we need to quickly analyze independently what the EC herself put out. This is what we have just done. Now, when we come here, these are the statements. At the end of transparent, fair, orderly, timely, and peaceful presidential elections, the total number of valid vote cast was 30,434,574. That's it. Representing 79% of the total registered voters. This is what she said. I'm not the one who said it. So we have used this figure. This is a figure I'm saying that now the EC herself completely ran away from this figure now. But still telling us something which is the next slide. This figure of 30,434,574 becomes the basis of the percentages of the presidential candidate performance in the elections. That's the absolute level we need to establish. This is the basis for all the things she has done. So if you declare somebody as president based on a figure that you have now run away from, statistically, it is null and void. Statistically, it is what? Null and void. You can't use this anywhere. So we need to ask questions. Now, again, she said, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo of the NPP obtained 6,730,413, being 51.295% of the total valid vote cast. This is what she said. This figure of 51.295% cannot be correct if it is based on the total valid vote cast already given as 30,434,574. We have established this very strongly. It is just not possible for her to get 51.295%. Okay. Now, from this total valid vote cast, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo's percentage should be 6,730,413 divided by the 30,434,574 multiplied by 100 so that we can get it in percentage terms. When you do that, you arrive at the value of what? 50.098% and not the 51.295 declared by the EC. So statistically, this is completely what? Fraud. Statistically, this is what? Completely what? Fraud. So we cannot use this data for anything. So what it means is that the declaration itself is actually completely out of the way. It needs to be nullified. Now, she said again, John Dramani Mahama of the NDC obtained 6,214,818, being 47.366%. These are all her own words. Of the total valid vote cast. This figure again, that is the 47.366%, cannot be correct if it is based on the total valid vote cast already giving us 30,434,574. Now, from this total valid vote cast, John Dramani Mahama's percentage should be 6,214,818 divided by the 30,434,574 multiplied by 100, which will give us 46.260%, and not the 47.366 declared by the EC. Again, inconsistencies, inaccuracies in the declaration of these very 2020 results. This applied to all the other 10 candidates on the ballot paper. The percentages attributable to them was not correct. If the total valid vote cast is 30,434,574. Again, if the total vote cast is 30,434,574 votes that were cast. Now, so here, just for the purpose of our audience, we try to actually calculate if there are some variations in the other 10 minor political parties that contested the presidential elections. Because remember, she said it doesn't affect their results. All of them are still having the same result. It doesn't change them. But we can assure you, and as you can see, this actually changes most of them. For instance, if you take Goom's percent, it's actually 0.786% and not the 0.805% declared by the EC. If you also take the CP's percent, it should actually be 0.091% and not the 0.093% declared by the EC. And all others inclusive. If you take, for instance, that was the NDP's percent, it should actually be 0.049% and not the 0.050%. So the same thing by the EC, that the changes in the total number of valid vote cast doesn't affect the figures or the percentages for each of the candidates. We have been able to establish that this is incorrect. Completely incorrect. Totaling all what the percentages should have been based on the total valid vote cast and the valid vote attributable to all the presidential candidates, the total percentage will be, then we add up all the 12 candidates. When you do that, you arrive at the total percentage of 97.67%. So realize that because of the manipulation, certain figures were taken out without control. So they are unable to account for about 2.33% of the vote cast. So what it means is that there is under-reportage of the total valid vote cast. The EC needs to let us know where that 2.33% vote went. We need to understand that. Okay. This total percentage of 97.67 cannot be correct because it is less than what? 100%. Because what we are doing is that for each valid vote for each candidate, you take each of them and divide it by the total number of what? Valid vote cast. So when you finish, by the time you add all the percentages, they should go to 100% because you have used all the information available to you. So we need to understand why even we add everything, still we are hanging in terms of the percentages. Hence, the result declared cannot be correct based on the total vote cast of the 30,434,474 given by the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, Jim Mensah, in her speech on the 9th December 2020. The result did not include Techiman South total voter population of 128,018, as the EC herself declared during the 9th declaration. If this figure is added to the total valid vote cast given by the EC chairperson as 30,434,574, the resultant total valid vote cast will be 30,434,574 plus 128,018. And that will give you a total valid vote cast of what? 30,434,574 562,592. That's what you're supposed to get. So in this case, if all the vote of Techiman South is added to John Dramani Mahama, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo's vote will remain the same, and his percentage will be 6,730,413 divided by the 30,462,592 times 100, and that will yield a percentage of 49.625%, which is less than 50%. So, per our constitution, Nana Addo did not win this election. This is a pure, straightforward runoff. We need to go for runoff. Pure. So, we put here just to emphasize the statement made by what? The Electoral Commissioner herself. That's the chairperson of the Electoral Commission. Now, this is what I'm saying. You see, if you see the vote obtained for individual candidates over there, that is actually the valid vote cast for each of the presidential candidates. So this is why I'm saying that even if you add the total votes that EC claimed were obtained by the individual candidate, if you add it, that will not even be equal to the 119,460 that the EC herself put out. In the same, the same table at the top, but the figure written at the down, they are different things. So how can we trust these results? Meanwhile, it is based on these results that pronouncements were made, that a declaration was made. So if this result is already flawed from that person's own office, it's not my data, it is the data of the EC. What they put out is what we're talking about. And we are talking about facts and figures. I'm not even adding anything. So the next thing that I want to talk about, is just those individuals. We want to actually highlight some of these things again, just for you to know that the total value broadcast was giving us what? 30,119,460. With this figure, the percentage given are not what? Correct. Even with their own, the one they are now claiming that the first one they gave is a wrong one, they didn't even say it's a wrong one. Even they just say inadvertently. Even what we were giving is completely different from what is even here. Even what was put on the 9th of what? December. So currently, if you use even what they have given it to us now, and you compute the percentages, it doesn't even agree what is in the table from the same EC. So these are some of the new results that we get for the other 10, like I mentioned earlier. There were differences in the vote recorded in this press release as obtained by the various presidential candidates compared to the declaration made on 9th of December 2020. Note also that the total vote cast was given in her first declaration on the 9th of December as 30,434,574, and her subsequent declaratory statement on 10th December was 30,433,573. A difference of 1,001 votes. Where from that one? We are asking questions. From the same EC's office. So please, there are many things that is going on wrongly here. And as I said earlier, it's a systematic effort to manipulate the votes. No doubt about that one. This means that there is a new introduction of a third figure of the 30,433,573 as the total vote cast, making it 3 different figures given officially as the total vote cast, which is fundamental in calculating the percentage of votes gained by each candidate. So what it means is that right now, as you and I are talking, there are 3 different denominators. There are 3 different totals. So how do we know which one is correct? And it keeps changing. So we need to ask questions. So we try to summarize how much was added to some people, how much was taken away from some people. This is a summary table for that one. So if you look at the MPP, which is for Nana Addo, you realize that the initial vote that he obtained on the 9th of December as declared by the EC happened to be 6,730,413. Then the one that they brought on the 10th of December through the press release was 6,730,587. So clearly, a total number of 174 votes addition were made to Nana Addo's result. Okay? But if you come to the NDC, which is the former president of Dramani Mahama's vote, you realize that on the 9th, he was given 6,214,889. But when you come to the 10th, he was given 6,213,182, a reduction of 1,707. And like I reported earlier, don't look at this as an absolute figure. Look at this as times 2. Because he has already secured this vote, but was taken from him. So if you want to come back to this vote, you need to do a double to be able to equate this very value. But then another way is already gone. That's the strategy. So again, there's a conscious effort on the part of the electoral commissioner, Jean Mensa, just to manipulate the result. And some of us are beginning to suspect that maybe somebody else is producing the result for her. She's not doing it herself. Because the fact of the matter is that even if she's doing this by herself, how many times can you commit this brander? So clearly, fundamentally, Nana Addo did not win this election. It was actually a matter of what? Vote manipulation, figure manipulation. This is the only way they can allow him to remain. But the truth is what we are presenting to the people. This is the truth, based on the EC's own what? Data. Now, if you look at some of them, like PPP, they are likely to even be added 1. If you look at PPP, that is +1. So it means that on the 9th, they had 6,848. But if you come to the 10th, they now have 6,849. They are likely to at least get 1. So that would mean that 2, they were pushed 2 times. Okay? So, but if you come to independent candidate to a bit lucky, he or she was added 1. But again, if you come to NDP, they initially got, that is on the 9th declaration, 6,612. But on the 10th declaration, they now obtained 6,549, a shortage of 63. That means they have also reduced their vote by 63. So times 2, you know what it's going to be. So these are some of the things. So in on the right one, which is the last column, we try to just put it in figures for people to understand. So what it means is that MP figures increased by what? 174. Then NDC figures reduced by what? 1,707. So if you multiply that by 2, you're running into over 3,000. That's the meaning. If you multiply that by 2, you're running into over 20,000. What I also want to draw attention to is that in statistics, this is something people don't pay attention to. If 2 people are in a race, and then you got 30 and I got 20, and you strike the percentage, the moment, if let's say I got 30%, the moment I get additional single maybe number to add to my own, it will bring you who is leading me down by a certain margin. So if it is only 10 that you are being added, or you have added to somebody's vote, you are actually reducing the next person's vote. That's the meaning of it. So every single vote that is added to somebody, you are reducing the other person's, because every team must add up to 100%. That's the meaning of it. So we should not just look at this as absolute figures. They are going to cause a lot of harm. And they indeed cause a lot of harm. And as I presented earlier, when you saw it, you realize that if we actually take into account the 30-man vote, then there's a straight what? Runoff. This is not the things figure can do for you. So we need to understand the figures. Okay. The above table exposes the fundamental changes made on the absolute number of votes cast for each candidate in EC chairperson's declarations, dated 9th December 2020, and her subsequent declaratory statement issued on 10th December 2020. The above fly in the face of paragraph 2 of her statement issued on the 10th of December 2020. This does not change the percentages stated for each candidate and the declaration made by the chairperson. You and I just had the benefit of what went on. The changes in the figures, the absolute figures, and even the percentages. But the EC still got a guts to tell you and I that will not, despite all these changes, it doesn't affect the percentages calculated. It doesn't affect her own declaration. As per the analysis above, there is a fundamental change in the absolute figures of vote cast for each candidate, contrary to the quote above, which definitely has resulted in changes in percentage through a subtle subtraction of 1,707 votes from candidate John Dramani Mahama of the NDC, and various candidate subtractions from the other candidates, except the PPP and the independent candidate, like you have seen, who had additions of 1 each. Candidate Nana Akufo-Addo of the NPP had an increase of 174 votes cast. This is how the Electoral Commissioner, Jean Mensa, achieved the figures upon which candidate Nana Addo was declared the winner of the election of the 7th December 2020 polls. So, based on the evidence available to me as a statistician and a data analyst, using the EC's own data, this comes to support the position of the candidate John Dramani Mahama of the NDC that he should not accept the result as declared by the EC, because the EC's own figure indicated that, in fact, there's no winner in this election, and that should there be anything at all, it's a straight runoff. Thank you.
Suzuza.